Okay, now, welcome to yet another unscripted and unstructured and unplanned recording. I'm not going to call it a podcast yet because I don't even know if I'm going to post it. But here is a recording. Whether you listen to this or not depends probably much on the fact of whether I post it or whether I withhold it from being posted. Here you go. Alright, so the last podcast I made and posted actually was in response to me having been inspired by Terence McKenna's recording, which was from the late 90s, just prior to when he died in the year 2000, about culture, what culture is, the etymology of culture, cultural conditioning and how it affects individuals and leads most people on average, as we've seen, and as I think I mentioned, to become conformists and conditioned thereby to that culture and its values, principles, beliefs, whatnot. There are also throughout history have also been, of course, those few rare different types of individuals, the eccentrics, even Jesus was one, because he actually brought about through what he taught and what he preached and what he conveyed to the people of the time, a different way of conceiving the world, and therefore a different moral, ethical code, which therefore changed people's opinions on how they should act and behave in the world towards one another and simply just in general, just how to be. And so these individuals have come across or have come about throughout history at various times, and they are called creative people, they are called artists, they are called heroes, they are called innovators, they are called inventors, they are called philosophers, they are called all types of different things. Sages, mystics, poets, whatever you want to call them. These people are simply people who think differently and through creativity, conceive of different ways so as to how people may live, or something might be, or what something could be, or how we could derive meaning from a certain thing, or create whatever it is. And so therefore they are the change makers. They create and they allow for change in the world. Sometimes it's not very big, like minuscule levels, and sometimes it's really, really massive levels in terms of religious, ethical, philosophical, political ideologies and systems which fundamentally change how human beings behave in the world, en masse, in a culture or society or civilization. So there was a couple of things that I wrote on the weekend that I wanted to just put in this recording, whether I put this up or not. Who knows? It's, at the end of the day, it's whether I deem it as being worthy of being put up or not. But, so the first was this. There is no inherent ethical or moral system or value system operational in nature. So too is there no innate meaning implicit in beingness and life itself. Now, this isn't my opinion or my... Okay, before I start this, I don't have any opinion. I don't feel as though I understand truth. I don't think I know any better than anyone else, okay? Just like any ancient philosopher who said, or any person who was deemed wise throughout history who have said things like, the more I know, the more I realize what I don't know and how ignorant I truly am, because the more I become aware of, the more I realize how much I'm unaware of. That's my same point of view. So this is just a perspective. I'm not saying it's the truth or anything aligned with, I'm not trying to preach and tell you anything, okay? I'm just trying to perhaps, this is a brainstorming session. So let's just begin with that as a precursor before I even start this. So this is what the first thing that I wrote the other night. So yes, there is no inherent ethical or moral value system operational in nature. So too is there no innate meaning implicit in beingness and life itself. These things, these ethical and moral prescriptions for individual and group behaviour created by humans, which are systems of meaning conscribed within the philosophical ideals and ethical rules laid out within religious and political codes, have existed in myriad kinds, many with similar fundamental laws or guidelines so as to how people ought to behave in the world. Yet all of them, throughout the vast timeline of human culture, since the dawn of language and the ability for human beings to convey and articulate ideas and meaning between one another, have differed from culture to culture and civilization to civilization, as different empires have risen and fallen and human societies have been withering, then sprouting anew, in constantly novel and original expressions along that very timeline of human civilization and cultural diversity. Is it not clear, when peering into and studying history, and so gaining a larger picture of it, and thus a clearer understanding of what has occurred in times past, that humanity and its countless expressions of individuals, societies and cultures, with their unique and authentic ideas, ideals, values and meanings for life, therefore different systems of religion or conceptions of philosophical or political ideals, individual ideas, myths of meaning which give reason and purpose for the actions of tribes, clans and empires, actually gave the people who lived by them at the time, who believed in them wholeheartedly and who absolutely convinced and assured of the truth of their particular culture's values or system of meaning, by the very fact that we now understand just how vast in number these different expressions of meaning, value, ethical and moral codes and rules for human conduct there has been. Is it not clear then, does that not blatantly suggest that these are actually simply things that humanity requires? We require meaning, we require purpose, we require something bigger than us to strive for. These requirements do not, by the way, imply that our cultural values or beliefs are in any way in correspondence with some objective truth inherent in existence or fundamental to the universe itself. These requirements were the precondition, the need human beings have seemed to innately possess since we developed the ability to think, which has given rise to that which gives us a reason to live, to continue to maintain our sense of faith, both individually and collectively, for the possibility of transcendence, for our hope of ultimately overcoming the painful or confining aspects of life in the now, and the conception of some potential future ideal which gives genuine reason for us to strive, work, and passionately and vigorously pursue our endeavours and infuse belief in us, individually and collectively, within our cultural faith structure, which is the system or shared framework of agreed upon and accepted rules, laws, values, and beliefs that we are all contributing to and cooperating together towards. That future ideal which our system of values and the moral codes contained within it provide so as to give rise to a sense of purpose and meaning, and provides genuine reason within our culture, allowing us to live with hope and a shared faith that our lives have real, inherent, important meaning. So that was the first little one I wrote. Sorry, I'm probably flying through this because I'm very self-conscious for some reason as a individual myself. This is and so therefore I often feel as though I'm being judged by people around me, even though there's literally no one around me. How weird. How paranoid. I know, I'm messed up. Yes. So, this was in response, what I wrote here on Sunday was in response to a quote by Marshall McLuhan, who from memory was a Canadian philosopher in the 20th century. He said, and he was a philosopher he mostly was interested in culture and how beliefs come about, how people are conditioned, how, sociological factors of how people adopt certain beliefs and accept certain things, things like that, propaganda, whatever else, and the history and etymology of also culture and beliefs and myths and systems of group, collective value and things like that. So, this was his quote, Marshall McLuhan. Every society honours its live conformists and its dead troublemakers. I'll let you think about that for a second. And this was what I wrote in response to that. The troublemakers McLuhan was referring to were not criminals or those who intentionally carried out harm or acted in purposefully violent, destructive ways. Troublemakers, from the standpoint of culture, are the artists, the philosophers, the visionaries, the eccentrics, the tricksters, the abstract, authentic, original thinkers who expose the absurd, irrational, contradictory, nonsensical procedures and preposterous processes, elements and principles within a given culture or collective system of shared laws, values, codes and beliefs who, through their artistry and creativity and novel ideas, strip culture of its presupposed absolute truths and reveal its fragility in all its vulnerability and shamefulness. I had in brackets here, and it's long. Not that I am in any way attempting to highlight the similarity of this process and role of the nonconformists in the healthy reconstruction of culture by bringing its weaknesses, failures, false beliefs, and unjust predicates to light among the collective consciousness of its citizens, and thus helping to continually discard its outdated and invalid assumptions. Not that I am comparing that to how God brought shame upon Adam and Eve after they had eaten the forbidden fruit in the Old Testament biblical myth, sparking the discomfort of self-consciousness within them as individuals, which made them tremble with existential angst when they became painfully aware of just how vulnerable, naked, fragile, and exposed they'd become as a direct result of going against God's commands, which are in no way different to cultural rules of what we conceive in our modern day of as being cultural rules. They're the same because they're the prescribed system of commands and what we are told so as to how to behave and act and what to perceive as morally just or unjust and things like that. So God's commands, cultural rules, same thing. Not that I'm anyway blah 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 by eating. Oh, okay. Let's go back to. Not that I'm in any way comparing that to how God brought shame upon Adam and Eve after they'd eaten the forbidden fruit in the Old Testament biblical myth, sparking the discomfort of self-consciousness within them as individuals, which made them tremble with existential angst when they became painfully aware of just how vulnerable, naked, fragile and exposed they'd become as a direct result of going against God's commands, which are in no way different to cultural rules, by eating from the tree of the knowledge is akin to awareness of good and evil. So therefore they transcended the animal instinctual reactionary consciousness, which is what we conceive as most animals of having in how they act in the world. They're bound to simply reacting based on instincts and the stimuli that they're exposed to in their environment, whereas we humans conceive of ourselves as actually being a higher animal because we have these things such as being able to reflect on past memories and project how plans and how we might act in the future, which is that's the distinction between what we conceive of as human consciousness and animal consciousness, the ability to think and basically retract from our present state and think about the memories and things that we've learned from the past by just simply bringing memories to our consciousness and awareness, and then perhaps making plans or projecting how we're going to act in the future based upon what we've learned. So therefore, all I'm trying to do here is, well, I've learnt a fair bit from history myself. I'm not saying I know anything whatsoever. Yet again, I know no more truth than the average Joe at all, because again, the more I know, the more I learn, the more I realise how ignorant I am and just everyone is, really. We have no idea. But the people that I do get a little frustrated, let's say sometimes, when some people think that they genuinely know the truth and the only way so as to how we ought to be, how everything has been and how everything is going to go. Any culture that anyone ever studies throughout history that has ever thought of having knowledge of that kind of objective truth of how reality is and has been and is going to be, every single culture has been proved wrong in the past. Every single one, and there's been thousands, there's been many. I'm not saying that, look, I have no idea if the certain people that are claiming this in our modern day with whatever system of belief or whatever moral or ethical code or whatever truth they're preaching or claiming, I have no idea if they're right or wrong. They could well be truthful, and so I consider, and I'm very absolutely, I'm willing to hear their perspective and consider that as a different or one possible perspective of what could be true. However, I'm not one to, I just cannot myself, this is just me, I could never allow myself to justify my entire existence and how I'm going to act and be and live the rest of my life based upon one prescription, one moral code, one ethical moral system of shared beliefs and values, just because a lot of other people say it's true or it seems convincing or whatever. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't seem as though we can, as individuals, ever fully know. That's beyond the limits of the human individual. I realise that faith is necessary to partake in the world. We need faith to even go outside and not be thinking that there's going to be a million, tribesmen with spears about to stab, throw them all at us and therefore kill us. So we have to have some sort of faith that is to adapt and acclimatise somewhat to whichever culture we happen to live within, whichever society or civilization. We have to all have an element of trust, which is the same as having faith, of the other citizens, so that we can actually act and go outside and partake within the world together and cooperate without having to feel as though we're going to be killed or whatever else it is. But that doesn't, just because the culture or the beliefs of that culture, whether they're spiritual, religious or ethical or moral, just because they've been handed down for generations upon generations, or it might be some new sage or some new cult leader who's trying to convince people. I realise the flaws and the limitations of human gullibility. That's also I'm not saying I have no idea, but that's all I'm trying to say is that I would never be the type of person who claims to have knowledge of all of the truth of everything, because I feel as though that's actually very arrogant. But that's just my little perspective on it. And thank you.